The alarm klaxons of the New Phoenix Colony Defense Network screamed a high-pitched warning that seemed to pierce through metal and hope alike. Captain Michael Harrison watched the holographic displays fragment and collapse, each lost sector representing thousands of lives blinking out of existence. "Tactical overview," he barked, his voice steady despite the chaos consuming the command center around him. Lieutenant Aisha Patel's fingers danced across her quantum interface, pulling up increasingly desperate streams of information. "Sir, we've lost contact with sectors 7 through 12, she reported, her voice cracking slightly. "The Zarn battle groups are using quantum disruption technologies we've never seen before. They're not just attacking, they're systematically erasing our defensive capabilities." The situation had deteriorated with terrifying speed. Just 48 hours ago, New Phoenix had been a thriving human colony of 1.2 million people, a testament to humanity's determination to expand beyond Earth's increasingly crowded borders. Now it was becoming a graveyard. Michael remembered the diplomatic briefings from 6 months earlier. The Galactic Concordance had assured humanity of multilateral support against the Swarm, a collective alien intelligence that consumed entire planetary ecosystems. The Zarn Imperium, one of the oldest and most powerful members of the Concordance, had promised strategic support, advanced sensor technologies, and defensive coordination. Those promises now tasted like ash and betrayal. The primary defense grid began to collapse in cascading waves. Michael watched as entire residential complexes, each a small city unto itself, simply disappeared from the tactical displays. Quantum nuclear detonations left nothing but rapidly expanding clouds of superheated plasma where human lives had existed moments before. "Evacuation status," Michael demanded, knowing full well the answer would be grim. Lieutenant Patel's face told the story before her words could. "Minimal, sir. Maybe 12% of the colony's population. The Zarn's first strike disabled our primary and secondary transit networks. They knew exactly how to maximize civilian casualties. It wasn't just an attack. It was a calculated massacre." Michael's mind raced through the diplomatic and military intelligence he'd gathered over the past years. The Zarn had always viewed humanity as an upstart species, too young, too aggressive, too unpredictable to be trusted with true galactic power. This attack was more than a military engagement. It was a message that said, "Know your place. Signal the remaining ships," Michael ordered. "Full quantum encryption. We need to preserve as much data as possible about this attack." Lieutenant Patel looked up, her eyes reflecting a mixture of rage and determination that Michael recognized from countless human resistance movements throughout history. "They want to erase us, sir, but we're going to make sure that's impossible." The command center shook again. Another sector disappeared from the tactical display. Michael's hand touched the small holocrystal pendant around his neck, a gift from his daughter before he'd been deployed. Sarah was back on Earth, safe, but the millions dying here today were someone else's children, someone else's family. "Transmit everything," he said quietly. "Every sensor reading, every tactical assessment. Make sure the Concordance knows exactly what happened here today." As if in response to his words, the primary command center's shielding began to fail. Quantum disruption fields started to eat away of the structural integrity, creating surreal fractal patterns of destruction that seemed to defy the basic laws of physics. Lieutenant Patel was still working, her fingers a blur across the quantum interface. "Transmission at 73% complete, sir. They won't be able to hide this. They won't be able to wash away what happened here." Michael allowed himself a grim smile. The Zarn might destroy New Phoenix. They might kill millions, but they would not erase humanity's witness. "Final evacuation protocols," he ordered. "Get every surviving ship out. Preserve our people." The command center's walls began to dissolve around them, quantum disruption fields turning solid matter into a fine, almost beautiful mist. Michael watched the tactical displays, committing every detail to memory. This was not the end. This was the beginning of something the Zarn could not possibly understand. Humanity would remember, and humanity would respond. The underground research facility beneath the Movave Adaptive Response Complex didn't look like humanity's salvation. Concrete walls stretched between gleaming quantum computing banks, and holographic displays flickered with data streams that would make most scientists' minds collapse from sensory overload. Rebecca Torres stood at the center of controlled chaos, her hands moving in intricate gestures that manipulated complex quantum algorithms like a conductor leading an impossible symphony. Around her, the most brilliant minds humanity had ever assembled worked with a singular purpose: transform collective trauma into strategic innovation. "We're not just rebuilding," she muttered, more to herself than to the team surrounding her. "We're rewriting the entire paradigm of interstellar conflict." 10 months had passed since the New Phoenix colony massacre. While the Galactic Concordance issued bland diplomatic statements and the Zarn Imperium maintained a careful silence, humanity had done something entirely unexpected. Instead of mourning, they weaponized their grief. Every major research institution had been redirected. Universities that once competed for academic grants now collaborated with military think tanks. Quantum physicists worked alongside xenobiological engineers. Psychological warfare experts collaborated with AI developers. The entire human infrastructure had become a single, massive problem-solving organism. Major James Wong entered the facility, his augmented neural interface casting a soft blue glow behind his left ear. A veteran of both terrestrial and extraterrestrial conflict resolution, Wong represented a new breed of strategic thinker. He wasn't just a military strategist, he was a human systems architect. "Progress report," he said, not a question but a statement. Rebecca's holographic display shifted, revealing layers of computational models that looked more like abstract art than strategic planning. "We've mapped approximately 73% of the Zarn communication infrastructure. Their quantum encryption is sophisticated, but not impenetrable." She zoomed in on a particular section of the display. Intricate network pathways pulsed with potential infiltration points, each represented by a complex algorithmic signature that seemed to breathe with potential energy. "The key," James explained to the assembled team, "isn't to fight their technology. It's to understand their psychology so completely that their own systems become vulnerable." Nearby, Elena Rodriguez worked on a series of adaptive AI models that could predict alien behavioral patterns with terrifying accuracy. Her screens displayed complex interaction trees, each branch representing potential response scenarios that seemed to shift and evolve in real time. "Traditional military strategy is linear," Elena would often say. "We're developing something closer to living, breathing strategy. An approach that doesn't just react, but anticipates and transforms." The facility buzzed with an energy that was part scientific breakthrough, part collective vengeance. Survivors from New Phoenix Colony worked alongside them, not out of hatred, but out of a cool, calculated determination to ensure such an event could never happen again. Major Wong approached a holographic display showing cultural and communication models of the Zarn Imperium. "They view conflict as a mathematical equation," he explained. "Resources, potential gains, calculated risks. They don't understand adaptive resilience. They don't comprehend a species that can transform pain into innovation." Rebecca's quantum algorithms began to map potential communication infiltration points. Each potential pathway was a potential weapon, not just of destruction, but of fundamental systemic transformation. "We're developing technologies that don't just defend," she said quietly. "We're creating systems that can fundamentally reshape interstellar dynamics." The team worked in shifts that seemed to defy human limitation. Augmented coffee machines dispensed neurologically optimized stimulant blends. Sleeping pods allowed for maximum rest with minimal downtime. Every moment was an opportunity for breakthrough. Outside the facility, the world continued its normal rhythm. Most humans had no idea of the revolution being engineered beneath the desert. Satellite imagery showed nothing more than a standard research complex, The most advanced weapon humanity had ever developed was being created in total silence. Major Wong looked at the team. Scientists, military strategists, survivors, innovators. The Zarn believe they destroyed a colony, he said. They have no idea they've actually initiated humanity's true awakening. As if in response, Rebecca's quantum display flickered. For a moment, something that looked almost like a smile crossed her typically analytical features. The preparation had begun, and the galaxy had no idea what was coming. The attack began with silence. Not the silence of empty space or dormant systems, but the silence of precision. Elena Rodriguez sat in a nondescript control room that looked more like an avant-garde art installation than a military command center. Holographic interfaces danced around her, each representing a carefully constructed vector of infiltration. Initiating primary quantum cascade, she murmured, her fingers moving with the delicate precision of a concert pianist. The first signs of the attack were so subtle that Zarn network administrators wouldn't realize they were under assault for several critical hours. Financial algorithms began to shift, imperceptibly at first, then with increasing complexity. Trading patterns that had been stable for centuries started to develop microscopic irregularities. On the financial hub world of Zarn Prime, the first warning came from a mid-level economic analyst named Vornak. A standard quarterly report showed anomalies so minute that they would have been dismissed as computational errors by any less meticulous observer. But they weren't errors. They were the first tendrils of a systematic dismantling. Major James Wong watched the initial stages from a quantum-shielded observation deck. "It's not about destruction," he explained to the team monitoring the operation. "It's about creating systemic uncertainty. We're going to make them question everything they know about security, communication, and power." Quantum infiltration algorithms developed by Rebecca Torres began to weave through the Zarn communication networks. These weren't simple hacking tools. They were living, adaptive systems that could predict and counter defensive responses before they could be formulated. The first major system to fall was the Zarn Central Economic Regulatory Network. Trading algorithms began to produce results that defied all known economic models. Entire planetary markets started to show impossible fluctuations. Investments that had been stable for centuries began to collapse in ways that seemed to violate basic financial physics. On 3 different Zarn peripheral colonies, communication networks suddenly became unreliable. Messages would arrive out of sequence. Encrypted channels would spontaneously decrypt, revealing sensitive information. Military communication protocols that had been considered unbreakable for millennia suddenly became as transparent as glass. "Target acquisition complete," Elena reported, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what was happening. Phase 1 of systemic infiltration at 97% efficiency. What made the attack truly terrifying was its precision. The human team wasn't destroying Zarn infrastructure. They were systematically removing its ability to function. Military supply chains began to develop impossible bottlenecks. Automated defense systems started to receive conflicting directives that paralyzed their decision-making processes. Captain Michael Harrison watched the strategic overview, a holographic display that looked more like a living, breathing organism than a traditional tactical map. "We're not just attacking their systems," he explained to the team. "We're attacking their fundamental understanding of how systems work." On the financial hub world, panic began to spread, not through traditional communication channels, but through the slow, terrifying realization that something fundamental had changed. Economic advisors found themselves unable to explain market behaviors. Military strategists discovered that their most secure communication channels were compromised in ways they couldn't comprehend. Rebecca Torres had designed the infiltration algorithms to be more than just destructive tools. They were adaptive learning systems that could evolve faster than any defensive response. Each attempt to counter the infiltration would only provide more data, more opportunities for the human systems to learn and adapt. "The Zarn believe in mathematical certainty," James Wong observed. "We're going to show them that true strategy is about something more fluid, something more alive." As the first day of the attack concluded, the Zarn leadership had no idea they were under assault. What they saw were seemingly random system failures, impossible economic fluctuations, and communication breakdowns that defied all logical explanation. They didn't realize that humanity had just declared war, not with weapons, but with pure adaptive intelligence. Elena Rodriguez allowed herself the briefest moment of satisfaction. The first strike was complete, and it was only the beginning. The news spread faster than light, not through traditional communication channels, but through the intricate web of galactic rumors, diplomatic whispers, and the increasingly panicked communications between various interstellar civilizations. Something was happening to the Zarn Imperium, something unprecedented. On the diplomatic space station Concordance Prime, Ambassador Rachel Nakamura watched the first reports come in with a studied neutrality that barely concealed her inner tension. Her augmented neural interface filtered through hundreds of communication streams, each one revealing another layer of the unfolding mystery. The Creel Collective was the first to break diplomatic silence. Their crystalline communication arrays began to buzz with speculation, their six-dimensional communication networks lighting up with increasingly frantic exchanges. Something is happening, their senior diplomat transmitted, that defies all known strategic models. Nearby, a vortex diplomatic cluster, a living, breathing collective intelligence that represented one of the oldest civilizations in the known galaxy, began to show signs of genuine confusion. Their normally impenetrable decision-making algorithms were producing increasingly erratic results. The human intervention, one of the vortex representatives communicated, represents a fundamental category error in our understanding of technological warfare. Rachel allowed herself the briefest moment of satisfaction. Humanity had done more than launch an attack. They had fundamentally challenged the entire concept of interstellar conflict. The Zarn's peripheral colonies began to show signs of systemic breakdown that defied traditional understanding. Economic networks that had been stable for millennia suddenly developed impossible fluctuations. Military communication channels became unreliable in ways that seemed to violate basic principles of information transfer. On the communication hub of Nexus Station, diplomats from a dozen different species gathered to discuss the increasingly bizarre reports. The Chlorian representative, a being composed of interconnected photosynthetic networks, displayed genuine agitation, its bioluminescent patterns flickering with unprecedented complexity. "This is not a traditional attack," the Chlorian diplomat communicated. "This is a fundamental restructuring of systemic integrity." Major James Wong monitored the situation from the Human Research Facility, each incoming communication adding another layer to their strategic understanding. "We're not just attacking their systems," he explained to the team. "We're revealing the fundamental weaknesses in their entire approach to civilization." The ripple effects began to spread in unexpected ways. Smaller species that had been marginalized by the Zarn Imperium for centuries suddenly found themselves with unexpected opportunities. Trade routes that had been carefully controlled for generations began to develop new, unpredictable pathways. Rebecca Torres watched the developing situation with a scientist's clinical detachment and a strategist's deep satisfaction. The quantum infiltration algorithms were performing beyond even their most optimistic projections. Each attempt to counter the human intervention only provided more data, more opportunities for their adaptive systems to learn and evolve. "The key," she explained to Elena Rodriguez, "is that we're not destroying their infrastructure. We're revealing its fundamental fragility." On a dozen different worlds, the first rumors began to spread. Not through official channels, but through the intricate networks of traders, travelers, and those who lived between the official narratives of galactic politics. The Zarn were vulnerable. Humanity had found a way to attack that didn't involve a single traditional weapon. They had discovered something far more powerful, the ability to make an entire civilization question its own fundamental assumptions. Ambassador Rachel Nakamura prepared her next diplomatic communication. It would reveal nothing. It would suggest everything. The art of strategic communication was about creating space for imagination, for fear, for possibility. "The galaxy is changing," she transmitted to her human handlers, "and no one yet understands how." In the research facility beneath the Mojave Desert, the team responsible for this unprecedented intervention allowed themselves a moment of collective breath. They had done something no species had ever accomplished before. They had made the entire galaxy pause and wonder. The Zarn High Command assembled in their most secure war chamber, a spherical room of impossible geometries that seemed to exist simultaneously in multiple dimensional states. Grand Strategist Krelvac studied the tactical displays with mounting horror. The systems they had trusted for millennia were betraying them, not to an external force, but to some incomprehensible strategic intelligence. "Prepare full offensive protocols," Krelvax commanded, his multi-tentacled form rippling with barely contained panic. "We will demonstrate the full might of the Zarn Imperium." Their battle plan was a masterpiece of traditional military strategy. 17 advanced battle groups would converge on what intelligence suggested were vulnerable human colony clusters: quantum displacement weapons, gravitational collapse generators, psychological disruption fields that could theoretically unravel entire planetary ecosystems. What the Zarn didn't realize was that they were flying directly into an elaborate trap, designed with a level of strategic complexity they could not even begin to comprehend. Captain Michael Harrison watched the incoming Zarn fleet through a quantum-encrypted observation network. "They're predictable," he muttered to Elena Rodriguez. "Perfectly, beautifully predictable." Elena's fingers danced across her quantum interface. The battle groups approaching weren't random targets. They were carefully constructed lures. Each seemingly vulnerable colony was actually a sophisticated defensive platform designed to draw out and neutralize the Zarn fleet in the most spectacular way possible. The first wave of Zarn ships entered the system surrounding what appeared to be a marginal human colony world. Advanced sensor masks made it look like a perfect target. Minimal defenses, critical resource infrastructure, a seemingly perfect strategic objective. What they didn't see were the quantum entanglement networks buried beneath the planetary surface, adaptive camouflage systems that could reshape entire planetary landscapes in microseconds, defensive technologies that existed in the liminal space between physical matter and pure information. Initiating primary disruption sequence, Elena reported, her voice calm despite the magnitude of what was about to happen. The first Zarn battle group discovered something was wrong precisely 2.3 seconds before total system failure. Their quantum communication networks began to produce impossible feedback loops. Navigation systems started to return conflicting data. Weapon targeting computers began to identify threats that didn't exist. Or worse, began to target the other ships in their own fleet. Rebecca Torres had designed the infiltration algorithms to be more than just defensive systems. They were living, breathing strategic entities that could predict and counter responses faster than any traditional military computer could process. "We're not defending," Major James Wong had explained during the planning phases. "We're fundamentally reshaping the entire concept of conflict." The Zarn ships began to turn on each other, not through external control, but through a systematic breakdown of their own communication and decision-making protocols. Quantum disruption fields created impossible geometric spaces where ships seemed to exist in multiple states simultaneously. Grand Strategist Krelvax watched in mounting terror as his carefully constructed battle plan dissolved into chaos. These weren't traditional battlefield failures. This was something else entirely. A form of warfare that violated every strategic principle the Zarn had understood for millennia. How is this possible? He transmitted to his fleet commanders. But the transmission itself became part of the problem. Each communication channel introducing more uncertainty, more potential for systemic breakdown. The human defensive platforms didn't need to fire a single traditional weapon. The Zarn fleet was destroying itself through a carefully constructed cascade of strategic uncertainty. Captain Michael Harrison allowed himself the briefest moment of satisfaction. "They approached this like a mathematical equation," he said quietly. "We approached it like a living system." As the last Zarn ships began to either destroy each other or simply wink out of existence, something became terrifyingly clear to the galactic observers. Humanity was playing an entirely different game, and they were winning. Concordance Prime became a crucible of mounting tension. The massive diplomatic space station, a marvel of interstellar engineering that had maintained galactic peace for centuries, now felt like a powder keg ready to explode. Ambassador Rachel Nakamura moved through the diplomatic corridors like a quantum ghost. Her augmented neural interface processed hundreds of communication streams simultaneously, each one revealing another layer of the unfolding crisis. The Tsar's catastrophic military failure had created a vacuum that every species in the galaxy was desperately trying to understand and exploit. The Vortex diplomatic cluster was the first to break. Their living, collective intelligence began to fragment, producing communication patterns that defied all known diplomatic protocols. The human intervention, their primary consciousness transmitted, represents a fundamental category error in our understanding of interstellar dynamics. Major James Wong watched the situation unfold from the Human Research Facility, each incoming transmission adding another layer to their strategic understanding. The quantum communication networks they had developed were capturing every microscopic shift in galactic political tension. "We're not just exposing the Tsar," he explained to Elena Rodriguez. "We're revealing the systemic corruption that has defined galactic politics for millennia." The first truly devastating revelations came not from human sources, but from the communication networks they had systematically infiltrated. Diplomatic encryptions that had been considered unbreakable for centuries began to dissolve. Hidden communications, centuries-old treaties, suppressed incident reports, all began to emerge. The Creel Collective found themselves implicated in a series of planetary genocides that had been carefully hidden from galactic record. The Chlorian networked consciousness was revealed to have been complicit in systematic resource exploitation of emerging species. Each revelation was like a precisely placed explosive charge, designed to systematically dismantle the existing power structures. Rebecca Torres watched the data streams with a scientist's clinical detachment. "Information is the ultimate weapon," she murmured. "Not destruction. Revelation." On the diplomatic floor of Concordance Prime, Ambassador Nakamura began to systematically dismantle decades of carefully constructed political narratives. Her communications were works of strategic art, each transmission revealing just enough to create maximum uncertainty, maximum potential for systemic transformation. The Tsar delegation, already reeling from their military catastrophe, found themselves under unprecedented scrutiny. Their historical records began to unravel. Diplomatic communications that had been considered secure for centuries suddenly became transparent. "We are not attacking," Rachel transmitted to the assembled diplomatic corps. "We are revealing." Major James Wong understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't about revenge. This was about fundamental systemic transformation. By revealing the hidden networks of power, humanity was creating space for something entirely new. The quantum communication networks developed by the human team were more than just communication tools. They were living, adaptive systems that could predict and counter diplomatic responses before they could be formulated. Each attempt to contain the emerging information only provided more data, more opportunity for their systems to learn and evolve. Elena Rodriguez monitored the developing situation with a strategist's satisfaction. The infiltration algorithms were performing beyond even their most optimistic projections. Entire diplomatic networks were being systematically exposed, their hidden power structures revealed in exquisite, devastating detail. On a dozen different worlds, the first true understanding began to spread. Not through official channels, but through the intricate networks of those who had been marginalized by the existing galactic power structures. The concordance was breaking, and something new was emerging. Ambassador Nakamura prepared her next diplomatic communication. It would reveal nothing. It would suggest everything. The art of strategic communication was about creating space for imagination, for possibility, for fundamental transformation. "The galaxy is changing," she transmitted to her human handlers, "and no one yet understands how completely. In the research facility beneath the Mojave Desert, the team responsible for this unprecedented intervention allowed themselves a moment of collective breath. They had done something no species had ever accomplished before. They had made the entire galactic power structure pause and wonder. The broadcast began without warning. Every communication channel in the known galaxy suddenly synchronized. Quantum communication networks that had been carefully developed over decades of secret research came alive simultaneously. The image that appeared was both familiar and utterly alien. A conference room that seemed to exist in multiple dimensional states at once. Captain Michael Harrison stood at the center, flanked by Rebecca Torres, Elena Rodriguez, and Major James Wong. Behind them, holographic displays showed data streams that seemed to defy the basic laws of information transfer. "We are going to explain exactly who we are," Michael began, his voice carrying a clarity that cut through millennia of galactic misconceptions. The technologies they revealed were beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. Quantum communication networks that could transmit information instantaneously across impossible distances. Adaptive nanotechnologies that could reconstruct entire planetary ecosystems in weeks. Predictive AI systems that could model complex societal interactions with terrifying accuracy. Rebecca Torres stepped forward, her hands moving through holographic displays that seemed to breathe with living information. "What you've witnessed," she explained, "is not an attack. It is a demonstration of a fundamental approach to existence that your civilizations have never understood." The displays behind her began to show impossible visualizations, ecosystem reconstruction models that could heal planetary damage in months, communication networks that could simultaneously translate and understand every known language, and many unknown ones, technologies that blurred the line between communication, computation, and living intelligence. Major James Wong presented the next layer of revelation. "Your current understanding of conflict is linear," he explained. "Resource acquisition, territory control, technological superiority. We've developed an approach that treats civilization itself as a living, adaptive system." Elena Rodriguez's contribution was perhaps the most terrifying. She demonstrated adaptive learning systems that could predict societal developments with such accuracy that they seemed almost magical. Economic models that could stabilize planetary ecosystems. Communication protocols that could resolve centuries-old conflicts in moments. The Zarn delegation watched in mounting horror. The Vortex Collective's multidimensional consciousness began to fragment. The Creel Collective's communication networks started to produce impossible feedback loops. "We are not here to conquer," Michael Harrison continued. "We are here to demonstrate a fundamental alternative to the systems you've maintained for millennia." The broadcast revealed layers of human development that had been carefully hidden. Not just technological capabilities, but a fundamental approach to existence that viewed conflict, communication, and development as interconnected living systems. Quantum communication networks showed how human societies had been developing technologies that treated entire planetary ecosystems as adaptive, living networks, technologies that could heal environmental damage, communication systems that could resolve conflicts before they began. Rebecca Torres demonstrated ecosystem reconstruction technologies that could transform entire planetary surfaces in months. Nano-adaptive systems that could clean oceanic pollution, rebuild atmospheric systems, and create sustainable infrastructure faster than any known civilization could comprehend. Major James Wong revealed predictive social systems that could model complex societal interactions with such accuracy that they seemed to predict the future. Not through mystical means, but through a fundamental understanding of how complex systems interact. Elena Rodriguez showed adaptive learning networks that could simultaneously translate and understand communication at levels that made previous translation technologies look like primitive scratching. The revelation was complete. Humanity wasn't just another species. They were something entirely different. "We are offering a choice," Michael Harrison's final statement rang through every communication channel. "Continue with the systems that have brought you conflict, or evolve." The broadcast ended as suddenly as it had begun. But the galaxy would never be the same. In the research facility beneath the Mojave Desert, the team responsible for this unprecedented revelation allowed themselves a moment of collective breath. They had just changed everything. The transformation began quietly. It started with the smallest of changes. Planetary ecosystems that had been dying for centuries began to heal. Communication networks that had been tools of oppression became platforms of genuine understanding. The technologies humanity had revealed were not weapons of conquest, but tools of fundamental reconstruction. Ambassador Rachel Nakamura stood at the center of the new Galactic Collaborative Council. The old concordance had been systematically dismantled, replaced by a framework that was more living system than political structure. Behind her, representatives from species that had been marginalized for millennia now sat as equals. "We are not here to rule," she explained to the assembled delegates. "We are here to demonstrate an alternative approach to collective existence." The Zarn Imperium underwent the most dramatic transformation. Their imperial structures were systematically replaced with democratic frameworks that valued individual potential over collective suppression. Major James Wong had personally overseen much of the restructuring, applying the adaptive learning systems that had become humanity's most potent tool. On dozens of worlds, entire planetary infrastructures began to change. Ecosystem reconstruction technologies developed by Rebecca Torres turned dead worlds into thriving, sustainable environments. Nano-adaptive systems cleaned centuries of industrial pollution. Atmospheric restoration became possible in months rather than millennia. Elena Rodriguez's communication networks became the new standard of interstellar interaction. Translation systems that could understand not just language, but cultural context, emotional nuance, and collective historical trauma. For the first time, species could truly communicate, not just exchange information. Captain Michael Harrison oversaw the most delicate part of the transformation. The military restructuring wasn't about disarmament, but about redefining the very concept of collective security. Defensive technologies became adaptive protection systems that could prevent conflicts before they could begin. The Creel Collective found themselves facing their own historical atrocities. Instead of punishment, humanity offered a path of genuine reconstruction. Restorative justice systems that could heal collective trauma became the new standard of interstellar conflict resolution. "We are not interested in revenge," Michael would often say. "We are interested in evolution." Quantum communication networks developed by the human team became the new standard of interstellar infrastructure. These were not just communication tools, but living, adaptive systems that could help species understand each other at fundamental levels. The Vortex Diplomatic Cluster, once a seemingly impenetrable collective intelligence, began to fragment and rebuild. Their multidimensional consciousness started to understand the value of individual perspective, a concept that had been alien to them for millennia. Rebecca Torres's ecosystem reconstruction technologies became a galactic priority. Worlds that had been considered dead could now be brought back to life. Industrial damage could be reversed. Entire planetary systems could be restored to balance in a fraction of the time previously thought possible. Elena Rodriguez's adaptive learning systems began to transform educational frameworks across hundreds of worlds. Learning became a collaborative, adaptive process. Educational systems that could understand individual learning patterns, cultural contexts, and potential became the new standard. Major James Wong continued to develop conflict resolution frameworks that treated societal interactions as living, adaptive systems. Predictive models that could identify and resolve potential conflicts before they could begin became the new standard of interstellar diplomacy. The human approach was fundamentally different. This wasn't about creating a human-controlled galaxy. This was about demonstrating a different approach to collective existence. Ambassador Nakamura prepared her final report to the human leadership. "We have not conquered," she transmitted. "We have offered an alternative." In the research facility beneath the Mojave Desert, the team responsible for this unprecedented transformation allowed themselves a moment of reflection. They had done something no species had ever accomplished before. They had shown the galaxy a different way of being. The stars themselves seemed to pause and listen.